Ambassador.
Very nice
Good
to have
see
you.
It's a pleasure to see you. You live in a very nice place.
Most welcome to the Swedish residence.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure to have you here.
Ambassador, how do you like this place? It's Islamabad. You have a nice house against this green, lush green backdrop.
It's beautiful. It's, as you can see, a lot of flowers. I have a beautiful view on the Margala.
Exactly. So you're very lucky that you live in such a nice environment.
Absolutely. And I'm privileged also in living in such a green environment.
Please. अस्सलाम वालेकुम। प्रोग्राम एम्बेसी रोड में खुश आमदीद। नाज़रीन, आज हमारी मेहमान हैं पाकिस्तान में स्वीडन की सफ़ीर मोहतरमा उल्रिका सैंडबर्ग। ये पाकिस्तान में स्वीडन की एक बहुत फ़ाल और मुतर्रिक सफ़ीर हैं और ये पाकिस्तान और स्वीडन के दरमियान दोस्ती और मरासम को मुस्तहकम करने के लिए बहुत अहम किरदार अदा कर रही हैं। आज उनसे हम गुफ्तगू करेंगे और पूछेंगे कि पाकिस्तान और स्वीडन के ताल्लुकात किस मरहले पे हैं और मुस्तकबिल में इन ताल्लुकात में तोसी के क्या इम्कानात हैं। Ambassador, thank you very much. You have joined this program.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you very much. How do you look at Pak-Swedish relations, which are at the moment? You think they are good or they need to be expanded and further promoted?
I think Sweden-Pakistan has excellent relationship. There are, of course, possibilities of improving. One of the areas we would like to work on is increase the volume of trade. We have had the Swedish trade minister here. She visited in late November. And she gave a sort of challenge to all of us, which was to double the trade to 2015 between Pakistan and Sweden. So that's what we are working on. Also, Minister of Commerce Fahim has visited Sweden. And we have identified new areas which we were not really working on.
Which areas, Ambassador, you have identified? Both sides have identified where the trade can be increased and volume could be doubled or tripled.
We have, if I look first on the Swedish-Pakistani direction, we see that there is a need for Swedish clean technology, environmentally friendly technology. We see in the IT sector, telecom sector, but also in terms of bringing what we call symbiocities. Since you have a trend of urbanization in Pakistan, there are elements like how would you plan a city, mass transportation, waste management, and also try to help Pakistan on the energy side with biofuel, biomass, hydroelectric power, improve the transmission and the sort of transportation of electricity across the country to diminish the transmission losses. So those are the areas where Sweden could have something to offer Pakistan. On the Pakistani side, going to Sweden, we have identified fish and wonderful seafood. Of course, your mangoes.
Sweet mangoes.
Absolutely, the 100 different sorts of mangoes that you have in this country. Plus, of course, art crafts, but more textiles, home textiles, home decoration. Pakistan has very advanced capacity, particularly compared to the neighboring countries. And that is something that interests a lot the Swedish companies. So when they are talking about this region, Pakistan is immediately singled out as the country where they would like to increase, double or triple their volumes. So I think the future of our bilateral relations is also excellent, if not above that. We can probably get close to perfection.
Ambassador, you spoke about Pakistan's energy crisis. You spoke about transportation issue and clean environment. But the people of Pakistan at the moment need help in the energy sector. The power outages are making people angry, and they are resorting to streets to protest these power outages. The energy sector is the sector where Sweden can help most to Pakistan. So what could be done to alleviate or to basically solve and address this issue of energy?
Well, we are working on several fronts there, actually. One has to do with the energy policy. You might be aware that there has been a joint effort by a group called Friends of Democratic Pakistan.
Yes, FODP.
FODP, that set up a task force to come up with sort of policy recommendations, which had to do with creating, for example, a Ministry of Energy, instead of having several ministries dealing with the energy portfolio. That is one aspect. Also, it has to do with deregulating the market and letting the market set the price. Also, as we know, people are not very happy to pay bills for services they have not received. So, of course, we would like to ensure that there is a steady flow of energy, electricity coming to all the households, all the factories, manufacturers, and so forth. The Swedish contribution, of course, lies around the environmentally friendly technology that can be provided here. You have, of course, hydroelectric power stations that have already been built by Swedish companies, particularly up in Kashmir, in something called Jagran 1 and 2 and
Jagran,
3.
yeah.
That was constructed by a Swedish company called Skanska. But, and of course there are untapped water resources in the north of Pakistan, be it in Gilgit-Baltistan, Azad Kashmir, and other places. But also we have looked at the transmission. There is a high percentage of transmission losses. There you would have companies like ABB that can ensure a sort of high voltage that would diminish the losses. Since this is Pakistan, after all, is a very big country. It has a big sort of area that needs to be covered and transported before it reaches the actual consumer. But also on the biofuel and biomass, which is a new area, but as you know, you have plenty of cattle in this country, and they do generate energy, or they can generate energy. Then, of course, we have the coal extraction, we have solar energy, we have wind corridors, and you also can use the waves from the Indian Ocean to generate energy. So I think the energy problem of Pakistan can easily be solved, but it requires a little bit of leadership, and I think the policy is as important as the actual measures that can be taken on the ground.
नाज़रीन, हम एक मुख्तसर ब्रेक लेते हैं और ब्रेक से वापसी के बाद हम पाकिस्तान में स्वीडन की सफीर से मज़ीद गुफ्तगू करेंगे। वेलकम बैक। हम बातचीत कर रहे हैं पाकिस्तान में स्वीडन की सफीर साहिबा से। So what is your experience? What your experience teaches you? Pakistani leadership or the experts you meet, you frequently meet, or they have the will? Do they have the will to do all this and to solve the problem number one of the people of Pakistan, which is the energy crisis?
I think they have the will, but I think they are looking for someone to give them the orders and the direction. What strikes you with Pakistan is that it has a very high quality in its analysis, and it's very good at defining its problems and also the solutions. What we see less of is sort of the operationalization, making these decisions operational. And of course that means you have to go down to the communities, to the local communities, and make sure that you have capacity also at the level of TESILs to make things come through and realize the goals set. But that is something that like a group like FODP is willing to work with the government on these issues, train people, transfer all the knowledge and experiences, good and bad, that we have had ourselves when we've been trying to sort of decentralize certain functions. So I'm optimistic, but training people can take a couple of years or several years.
Price is another factor. People of Pakistan are poor and they are not able to pay the high price of energy. And the government keeps raising the tariff, the energy tariff. So how could Sweden help Pakistani people to get cheaper energy?
First, by producing more. Energy doesn't have to be expensive. It's a question of just meeting the demands of the actual customers. We deregulated our own market. And when we did that, the prices went down. Because there were less people that needed to get salaries, less intermediary actors that should have salaries or their sort of expenses covered. So deregulation turned out to be a very good move, at least nationally for us. As you are well aware, there has been discussion about the subsidies, which means that producing more energy today for Pakistan means it costs more for the government to provide the electricity to the households. Which of course becomes a vicious circle and in a way works as a disincentive. So I think these policies that I mentioned before are key in unlocking the energy crisis for the
prospects for hydro energy in Pakistan, because as you mentioned that Pakistan has a huge potential to exploit in the hydro sector. What are the prospects of a cooperation or a collaboration between Sweden and Pakistan to produce hydroelectricity in Pakistan, which is cheaper, and Pakistan has huge potential to provide energy from water?
We will have a delegation exactly focusing on this issue in the fall of 2011, and that's when we will explore exactly where we could fit in. As you know, there are several actors already in this field, and we will then explore how we can plug in, and where, if it's hydroelectricity, where our greatest contribution can be, or whether it's going to be on other alternative sort of energy sources.
You mentioned the IT sector where Sweden can help Pakistan. In what way Sweden can help Pakistani people in the IT sector, which is so important in modern life?
Well, of course, we have the technology. One aspect which sort of has come out also in this economic growth strategy that was presented by the Planning Commission is sort of increasing the interconnectivity within Pakistan. As we discussed before, Pakistan is a huge country. It's a vast territory that needs to be covered, and you have some very remote areas in maybe difficult natural environments, geographically difficult, be it mountains or deserts. But we do believe that internet, increasing the internet connectivity is a key for economic prosperity for Pakistan, and also allowing Pakistanis to come into the mainstream of the economy. We have seen that internet, mobile broadband works more or less like the railway did in the 1800s. With that, you have economic development. Connecting people, it allows people to sort of start doing small businesses, and then they grow into medium businesses. Of course, then you have the whole service sector, you know, calling centers and so forth, which is a little bit of an untapped sector in the Pakistani economy. It's not that you lack the human resources. It's more a question of setting them up. And I think the service sector is also an area where Pakistan has huge potential.
On the transportation, you mentioned that Sweden can help Pakistan build its mass transportation system. You are aware that our railway is not functioning.
Very much so.
And we are facing huge problems as far as railway is concerned. What prospects do you see in future that Sweden can help Pakistan build or upgrade the current railway system in Pakistan?
Well, first, we are already trying to contribute to improving the railway system by first giving it a signaling system that will prevent collisions and accidents. So that is being done as we are talking. But of course there is a need for new rails, new engines, and that has to be done sort of in a consortium with several EU countries. But there are companies that sort of are semi-French, semi-Swedish, semi-German, semi-Canadian that could come into this area. The area that we have really focused on is mass transportation. As you know, a city like Karachi or Lahore are very congested. There's a lot of cars. And it would be beneficial both for probably the peoples and their nerves when they're driving, but also from an environmental point of view to try to set up maybe not subways, but what we call buses, long buses, that would have stops just like subways or metros. And that will go, you could have flyovers to allow sort of a mass transportation system that would be then separated from the normal traffic. So the discussions are ongoing around this. We have very good experience from cities like Mexico City, from Rio de Janeiro, from Sao Paulo, and those experiences could very well serve.
Could be replicated in Pakistan.
It could be replicated in Pakistan, but can also serve as pilots.
Ambassador, thank you. We'll continue this interesting discussion. नाज़रीन, हम एक मुख्तसर ब्रेक लेते हैं और ब्रेक से वापसी के बाद हम पाकिस्तान में स्वीडन की सफ़ीर से मज़ीद गुफ्तगू करेंगे पाकिस्तान और स्वीडन के ताल्लुकात के हवाले से, और इसके अलावा जो हमारी इस वक्त इलाकाई सूरत हाल है, ख़ास तौर पर दहशत गर्दी के तनाजुर में, उस पर भी बात करेंगे। वेलकम बैक। हमारी गुफ्तगू हो रही है पाकिस्तान में स्वीडन की सफ़ीर मोहतरमा उल्रिका सनबर्ग से, और हम उनसे गुफ्तगू कर रहे हैं पाकिस्तान स्वीडन ताल्लुकात के हवाले से। एम्बेसडर, terrorism is a global phenomena and it is impacting the entire world. Important role in the war against terror. It is a part of the international partnership, international coalition, which is fighting the war on terror. How do you look at Pakistan's role in this war?
Sweden takes Pakistan's role in the fight against terror as a key role. Having lived a couple of years in Pakistan, I see what toll Pakistan has paid also in waging this war, not only on its own behalf, but also on behalf of my country and other countries in the world. Of course, 35,000 people dead, 5,000 soldiers that have paid with their lives is an enormous high toll. And we are in that respect very grateful. But we realize it's not enough. This menace is global. It requires a lot of cooperation between the countries, both when it comes to legal cooperation, intelligence cooperation, and of course also in terms of equipment and the will. And the will, actually, because it is difficult to sustain a will when you're being demoralized by seeing your closest collaborators fall or perish in such a fight. As you know, we have a global universal strategy which has been adopted by the UN, All of us have signed up to that one. I would also say that we have had a couple of cases on a bilateral basis with Pakistan, where the Pakistani authorities have been extremely cooperative and forthcoming, and I think we have managed to solve these issues, particularly when it comes to prosecution and extradition and so forth, in a very satisfactory manner. And that we are, of course, extremely grateful to the Pakistani authorities for it.
Afghanistan is considered to be the place from where the threat of terrorism and extremism emanates. And some foreign powers, United States of America and Western community, is also saying that the threat emanates from Pakistan-Afghanistan border, and there are some safe havens inside Pakistani territory. Do you think that this whole threat can be eliminated only through the use of force, or there could be some other alternatives to neutralize this threat of terrorism and extremism?
I will build on a European experience that we have had. You will recall that there were at least two big terrorist movements in the 70s and 80s in Europe. One was Baader-Meinhof, the other one was Brigado Rosso. We did manage to sort of undercut these organizations through the rule of law by applying the democratic principles and the law. We managed to sort of cut the breeding ground for these organizations. And I do believe that that is applicable also for Pakistan. That doesn't mean that you don't have to maybe apply several measures in parallel. We have seen the law enforcement operations both in Swat and in South Waziristan, and now ongoing in Momand and Bajor.
Kurram agency.
In the Orakzai agency in Kurram. So we see that that is as a first step, maybe. But the medium and longer term requires sort of a presence of a civilian administration and the applicability of the law across the whole territory. I think that is the experience that Europe can bring to the table here and to the reflection. Having served in Latin America, we saw similar developments also on the Latin American soil, that military actions or law enforcement actions alone is not enough. You need intelligence cooperation across the board. You need a national strategy for fighting terrorism, which of course then will have to be complemented with the international strategy that exists, and with the neighboring countries and with partner countries.
Do you think that things are moving in the right directions in Afghanistan, because the United States has started withdrawing its troops? The NATO is committed to withdraw troops by 2014. So do you think that in the intervening period, a solution will be found, peace will be restored in Afghanistan, and these forces of Western countries can leave Afghanistan saying that we have re-established peace and stability in Afghanistan?
I wish I could look into the future and say that we are on track. I think we are all working towards the same goal. I'm very much aware that there is a lot of concerns on the Pakistani side and also on the Afghani side when it comes to these timelines that have been outlined at this point and the deadlines to be met. There's definitely a big challenge ahead of us. Sweden has had troop presence up in Mazar el-Sharif. That area has been one of the first ones to be selected for doing the transition to the sort of Afghan civilian administration. We will have to see how that goes. Clearly, much needs to be done to build up the Afghan capacity. and maybe money is not the only solution. Maybe time is a very important factor. So I think we need to apply a pragmatic approach here. But clearly, an eternal presence of foreign troops in Afghanistan is not the solution.
Ambassador, what role the Swedish troops are playing in Afghanistan? They are combating the terrorism and extremism, or they are doing something else, building, they are engaged in a rebuilding process in Afghanistan?
Sweden has a very long tradition of working on development, on the development cooperation side in Afghanistan. So our troops have had as a primary task to accompany continued development efforts on our side and building up the national capacity, both on law enforcement, but just schools, healthcare centers, building up the social infrastructure. And they have basically had as a task to accompany the sort of other Swedish leg of our presence. But we have also seen that the solution is not to just give more money. We also have to put the experts next to the Afghanis to accompany them.
The experts are saying that, and the United States, NATO, other commanders are also saying that we are trying to build the capacity of the Afghan National Army, the police, and other institutions so that when they withdraw from Afghanistan, they are capable of handling the problems themselves. Are you satisfied, or Sweden is satisfied with the pace that is there to build the capacity of these institutions, including the army and the and the police?
I think we are waiting to see how the transition in our own area, in our PRT area, is going to go. I think we will have to evaluate as we go along whether we have done enough, what more needs to be done. But of course the goal is clear.
Right. So initially when the war against terror started in Afghanistan, the Western countries and the Western world had promised a lot of money, a lot of development funds, and they thought that Afghanistan would become prosperous, would become stable when they are going to spend this money in Afghanistan to educate Afghanis, to develop their communication system, etc. Where does Afghanistan stand now from your point of view?
Well, right this moment, I think there are several issues that are up with Afghanistan. And as you know, there is different international conferences scheduled for the fall, one at the regional level and then one at the international level in Bonn in early December. Those will be sort of evaluation points. Sweden is one of the countries who does give budget support to the Afghans government. But as you know, right now there are problems around accountability. There has been a big scandal around the Kabul bank. So we are a little bit in a wait-and-see mode as to how we proceed. But the scheduled events are important events for us in that regard.
Coming back to Pakistan-Sweden relations, Pakistan and Sweden are developing their relations in the field of defense. And Pakistan has been interested in securing some military hardware from Sweden. So is this process strong, and this process will continue in future, and this collaboration will remain on track?
We've had an extensive collaboration in the 60s, 70s and parts of the 80s. Currently, we are not really developing the relationship for different reasons. I think one has to do with the sort of capacities that the Pakistanis are requesting, where maybe Sweden doesn't really have the equipment that the Pakistanis are looking for. The other part has to do with also a certain change of regulation back home in terms of how we sell defense material that has dual use and those that have offensive use or attack use, where we are sort of changing our own policies. We have, after the fall of the wall in Berlin and the sort of reforms that have taken place in Europe itself, our defense technology has, of course, also adapted to the realities in our immediate neighborhood. So, and some of that is not relevant for Pakistan today.
Right. But do you think that there is a pressure from some international powers, like India, like United States of America and others, big players, that Pakistan should not be given the military hardware that it needs, because you think that it will aggravate the situation in South Asia, because Pakistan has tense relationship with India?
That might be a factor. It's not a factor that we have experienced. So we are continuing the collaboration that we sort of developed on very firm grounds, as I mentioned, in the 60s, 70s and 80s. That has been also to the satisfaction of the Pakistanis. There has been elements where we have, or issues where we have been able to contribute, notably on surveillance, for example. But we haven't felt that there is something that would sort of block us from pursuing new avenues. Not at all. It's been more that maybe we haven't been the right provider for what has been looked after.
Thank
or
you,
sought
Ambassador.
after.
We'll continue this discussion. नाज़रीन, हम एक मुख्तसर ब्रेक लेते हैं और ब्रेक से वापसी के बाद हम पाकिस्तान में स्वीडन की सफ़ीर से मज़ीद गुफ्तगू करेंगे. वेलकम बैक. हम बातचीत कर रहे हैं पाकिस्तान में स्वीडन की सफ़ीर साहिबा से. Ambassador, one way to curb terrorism and extremism is to alleviate poverty and give education to the people. It has been experienced that extremism emanates from areas where poverty is extreme and where educational facilities are not available. What could Sweden do to help Pakistan build these facilities in certain areas like Fatah and other areas which are considered to be the the areas from where these extremists and terrorists are bred?
What we have done, again, I'm coming back to our Friends of Democratic Pakistan. We did undertake what we called a sort of a conflict preventive study of the Fatahs and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan. It's called the PCNA. It's a working document, but it did have a certain a sort of human rights approach, or what we would like to call a rights-based approach, in the sense of trying to empower the inhabitants in the Fatahs and in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan. With that study, there was an undertaking from all of us, including Sweden, to try to work exactly in the areas that you pointed out, developing the social infrastructure, the schools, the health stations, but also generating employment and improving the justice system. So for that we set up a multi-donor trust fund. And Sweden is contributing to this multi-donor trust fund. It started at the beginning of the year. It's working. It's maybe not working as quickly as we would like, but it's definitely a beginning. And as I mentioned earlier, we do believe in this interconnectivity. We know that the Fatah Secretariat is very attached to their Tarukis. We believe that mobile broadband can also do an important work and be an important contribution in trying to meet their objective of namely getting everyone into gainful employment, income-generating projects.
Ambassador, I've seen a lot of places in Pakistan, in various cities, where Pak-Swedish technological institutes are there. In what way Swedish government is contributing towards promoting technology in Pakistan?
What you're referring to, the institutes, are something that came in a very big way in the 60s and 70s. And some of them are still active, and it's very nice to see. But we also know that a lot of them actually have closed down.
Why they have closed down?
Because there was not enough maintenance done. And it was symptomatic when our SIDA, which is the Swedish Development Authority, felt that it was time for the Pakistanis to own the projects themselves. Once it was taken over completely by the local communities, they did not invest in sort of maintaining the car park, the machine park, and therefore some of them closed down. Currently, we're much more looking at how we can ensure high quality on the technological education, to make sure that the Pakistanis who study in Pakistan come out with a degree that is internationally competitive. So there are at least 2 big projects which are ongoing, trying to ensure a sort of international bachelor and international master degree of technology. And it can be, of course, in electronics, in mechanical. That would ensure that a Pakistani with such a degree is an employable workforce also abroad, outside of Pakistan. So our role would be more around the quality control and ensuring that you have Swedish teachers that come here, professors, assistant professors, and so forth. But an increased exchange.
But are you ready to invest in more institutions which impart technological education to Pakistani youth, because Pakistani youth needs more skills for getting employment?
With these 2 projects, there will be investments made, and it will be very much coming from the private sector, because after all, they are the ones who are demanding this kind of human resources.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for giving time to me for this important conversation. नाज़रीन, हमने आज गुफ्तगू की है पाकिस्तान में स्वीडन की सफ़ीर से। उन्होंने हमारे साथ पाकिस्तान स्वीडन ताल्लुकात के मुख्तलिफ पहलुओं पे बात की है। दहशत गर्दी के ख़िलाफ़ जंग पे उन्होंने अपने मुल्क का नुक्ता नज़र जो पेश किया है, पाकिस्तान में इंसानी हकूक़ की सूरत हाल और ख़वातीन और बच्चों के हकूक़ के ऊपर भी उन्होंने खुलकर बात की है। हम उनके ममनून हैं कि उन्होंने हमारे इस प्रोग्राम में शिरकत की। Ambassador, I'm so grateful that you came for this show. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All the best.
Thank you for a good conversation.